There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It listens. It has weight. It waits like stone at the edge of a temple corridor, where torchlight can reach only so far before it gives up and becomes a trembling glow on the walls. In that half-light, the air feels older than breath. The floor is cool beneath bare feet. And ahead, always ahead, there is a door. Not a door made only of wood and metal, but a threshold that feels alive, the way a living creature feels alive when you stand close enough to sense its warmth. It doesn't swing open for curiosity. It doesn't yield to desire. It doesn't care how long you've been traveling, how many prayers you've said, how badly you want what you believe is waiting on the other side. You reach for it anyway. Everyone does. In the old imagination, older than history, older than the names we use for the self, doors were never neutral objects. A door was a question. A door was a judge. A door was a mouth that could speak one word and make your whole life rearrange itself around that sound. No. And the strange thing is not that the door says no, the strange thing is the way the no feels personal. Not like rejection from a person with opinions and moods, but like a law of nature that has looked directly at your inner shape and answered in perfect accuracy. It's not a no that insults you. It's a no that recognizes you. A no that knows which parts of you are ready and which parts are still hungry in the wrong way. That is the first hidden shock of the threshold. It answers back. And if you've ever lived long enough to look back and realize that the most devastating mistakes began with a door that opened too easily, then you've already felt the shadow side of what we're talking about. Some doors shouldn't open. Some doors that do open are traps with friendly hinges. Some doors open not because destiny is generous, but because something on the other side is starving. In a culture that worships access to money, access to status, access to lovers, access to secrets, we are trained to treat no as an enemy. We're told that the heroic self breaks through. Push harder. Want it more. Hustle. Grind. Manifest. Surely the universe is a vending machine, and the correct amount of effort will shake the prize loose. But what if the universe isn't a machine? What if it's a temple? And what if every no is not a punishment, but a protective intelligence? The kind of intelligence the ancients placed into their gods, into their sacred architecture, into their myths, because they knew something we keep forgetting, that the wrong opening at the wrong time can destroy your destiny faster than any closed gate ever could. This is where the name Thoth begins to flicker in the background. Not as a lecture, not as a museum exhibit, but as a presence that belongs in this corridor of living thresholds. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the keeper of measure, the one who weighs what is spoken against what is true. In the stories, his power is not brute force. It is precision. It is alignment. It is the ability to translate the invisible laws into symbols that can guide a human life. And when you think about doors through that lens, you start to feel the law hidden inside them. The law of thresholds is not about permission. It's about timing. It's about worthiness. Not in the moral sense we use to shame people, but in the practical sense of whether your inner structure can hold what you are asking to receive. Because every gift is also a weight. Every new room demands a larger spine. Every yes is a contract, and the contract is written whether you read it or not. Imagine for a moment the most ordinary door in your life, your front door. It separates what is yours from what is not. It keeps out weather, strangers, noise. It holds the line between private and public. If your front door swung open for every passerby, your home would stop being a home. It would become a corridor for other people's needs, other people's chaos, other people's hunger. Your life is no different. Your mind is no different. Your destiny is certainly no different. A door is a boundary with a purpose. And purpose is a kind of sacred geometry. It draws a shape around what matters. When you violate that geometry, when you open what should be closed or force what should be timed, you don't just change your circumstances. You change the pattern of your life. You invite in energies you cannot control, obligations you did not consent to, identities you did not choose with clear eyes. And this is why the no matters. Not as a mood, not as a moral judgment, but as an act of protection that preserves the architecture of your path. There's an ancient instinct in us that knows this. You can feel it when a friend asks you for something and your mouth wants to say yes out of habit, out of fear, out of the desire to be seen as good. But something deeper tightens in your chest, and you realize that a yes would be a leak. It would drain you. It would entangle you. It would open a door you will not know how to close later without pain. So you say no, and for a moment the air changes. Your body trembles with the shock of your own sovereignty. And then, strangely, you feel safer. Not because life got easier, but because you return to alignment. You reclaim the hinge. That's the kind of no we're dealing with. The kind that feels like it came from someplace older than social conditioning. The kind that feels like a guardian voice inside you. Calm, clear, non-negotiable. But here's where it gets eerie. Because some no's don't come from you at all. Some come from life. From the timing of events. From the sudden collapse of a plan. From the rejection letter. From a person who ghosts. From the deal that falls apart at the last second. From the opportunity that evaporates in your hands. And those no's can feel like betrayal. They can feel humiliating. They can feel like the universe is laughing at you, holding a feast just out of reach. Yet when Thoth's lens is placed over the scene, when the scribe's eye reads the pattern instead of the emotional storm, you begin to see another possibility. That life sometimes says no because you cannot yet carry the consequences of that yes. We usually imagine destiny as a reward. But destiny is also a responsibility. A bigger destiny is not a bigger trophy. It is a bigger field of influence, which means your errors echo louder. Your unhealed patterns spread farther. Your addictions become contagious. Your pride becomes a weapon. So the door stays closed, not to punish you, but to keep your future from being contaminated by your present. And this is where the mythic corridor becomes personal. Think of the no that changed your life. Not the small ones, not the polite refusals of daily life. The heavy one, the one that knocked the breath out of you. The one that made you sit on the edge of your bed at night and stare at nothing while your mind tried to bargain with reality. Maybe it was being denied love from someone you thought was your fate. Maybe it was losing a job you believed defined you. Maybe it was being kept out of a circle you wanted so badly to enter. Maybe it was a dream that simply wouldn't open no matter how many times you knocked. At the time, you probably interpreted it as failure. Most of us do, because we confuse a closed door with a dead end. But a threshold is not a wall. A threshold is a point of transformation. It asks something of you. It demands that you become the kind of person who can pass through without being destroyed by what is beyond it. This is why, in many ancient initiatory traditions, the path was structured around gates. The aspirant did not simply walk into the sacred chamber because they wanted to. There were guardians. There were questions. There were tests. There were names that had to be spoken correctly, not as a password, but as a demonstration of inner coherence. Because the real passcode is not a word, it's a state. And if you don't carry the right state, the door that opens will not feel like liberation. It will feel like punishment. You will step into a room too large for your nervous system, too loud for your soul, too powerful for your character. And then you will do what unprepared humans always do when they enter power too soon. You will seek control. You will seek validation. You will seek appetite. And appetite is the easiest way to be manipulated by anything that wants access to you. So the door says no, not as cruelty, but as containment. Not as denial, but as design. There's a subtle difference between a door that is locked and a door that is waiting. A locked door is just an obstacle. A waiting door feels attentive, almost intimate. It doesn't resist you with hostility. It resists you with discernment. It's as if it's watching for the moment you arrive as yourself, not as your performance, not as your desperation, not as your hunger. And that's why the no can be the most sacred instruction you receive. Because no reveals what you're trying to do with the door. Are you knocking because you're called? Or because you're afraid of being left behind? Are you pushing because it is truly yours? Or because someone else has it and you want to prove you're worthy? Are you asking for the next room because it serves your soul? Or because you're bored in the current one? A door does not open for boredom. A door does not open for envy. A door does not open for impatience. It may open for devotion. It may open for clarity. It may open for the kind of readiness that is not loud, not dramatic, not frantic, readiness that is quiet and stable, like a lamp that does not flicker when wine passes through the hall. Thoth, as the archetype of measure and record, would not be impressed by your intensity. Intensity is cheap. Anyone can burn bright for a week. He would be interested in your consistency, in your ability to hold a vow, in your capacity to speak truth without ornament, in your willingness to close doors that feed your lower self, even when those doors are pleasurable. Because this is what most people don't realize. Doors don't only lead outward, they also lead inward. There are doors in the psyche, thresholds between the conscious self and the shadow, between the persona and the raw animal under it, between the rational mind and the deeper intelligence that dreams in symbols. Some doors, if opened too suddenly, can flood your life with chaos. Some doors, if kept sealed forever, can turn you into a dry statue, functional, polite, numb. So the art is not opening everything. The art is opening the right door at the right time. And a guardian word that makes that possible is no. The no is the hinge that keeps your life from being invaded. It's the seal that keeps your energy from leaking into unworthy rooms. It's the boundary that tells the universe and the people in it and the forces in you, there is a sacred order here. There is a destiny being protected. There is a path being held intact. When you start to see it this way, you can feel something shift in your relationship with refusal. The next time life says no, you may still feel pain because you are human and disappointment is real, but underneath the pain there can be a new sensation, a strange trust, as if the corridor itself is guiding you, as if the door is not your enemy, as if the threshold is an ally that refuses to let you enter a room where you would lose yourself. And now the myth deepens, because once you accept that doors answer back, a second question rises like a whisper in the torchlight. If the door can say no, then who is keeping the record of every time you try to force it? And what is being measured in you each time your hand reaches for the handle? The corridor doesn't end here. The corridor is only beginning. And somewhere ahead, beyond the next bend in the stone hallway, the scribe waits, not with judgment, but with a ledger of thresholds ready to show you the hidden accounting behind every door you've ever wanted to open. Somewhere in that corridor, after the first sting of refusal, after the moment you realize the door isn't an object but an intelligence, there's a sound that begins to emerge if you listen closely enough. Not footsteps, not voices, something subtler. The faint rasp of reed against papyrus. The quiet insistence of a pen moving across a surface that remembers. It's a strange image, almost too simple to be terrifying. A scribe at work. But there are certain archetypes that don't need spectacle to feel immense. A judge does not have to shout to change your life. A scale does not have to announce itself to reveal your true weight. And a scribe, especially one like Thoth, does not need to threaten you in order to make you honest. Because the ledger is not written to punish. It is written to measure. Picture him not as a cartoon god, not as a distant statue, but as a presence that lives in the idea of record itself. The moment you understand that your life leaves imprints, you can feel him. Every choice, every promise, every time you opened a door that should have stayed closed, every time you refused a door that would have saved you. These things do not vanish in a fog. They become pattern. And pattern, in the ancient mind, is never random. Pattern is a signature. Pattern is a kind of destiny-shaping script. This is why it makes sense, on a deep symbolic level, that the guardian of doors would be a scribe. Because thresholds are not only physical spaces, they're transactions. And every transaction has a cost. We tend to think of doors as simple. You want something, you go toward it, you enter. But in the older spiritual imagination, the one that still hums beneath myths and temples, entry is not automatic. Entry is negotiated. Entry is earned. Entry is accounted for. There is an accounting that happens long before you touch the handle. You can feel it in the way certain opportunities come with a strange heaviness in the stomach, even when they look perfect on paper. You can feel it in the way some invitations are flattering, yet somehow draining. You can feel it in the way a relationship can look like a dream and still make your nervous system tighten, as if it's bracing for impact. That sensation isn't weakness. It's not overthinking. It's your inner ledger sensing hidden clauses. Because every door has terms. And most people walk through doors the way they click, except on contracts they never read, blindly, hurriedly, assuming the future will be kind. Thoth's hidden law is the opposite of that. It is the law of conscious entry. The law that says, nothing is truly yours if you haven't paid attention to what it costs you to hold it. And the cost is rarely just money or effort. Often, the real price of a door is subtler and more intimate. Sometimes you pay with time, years that vanish into a room that never loved you back. Sometimes you pay with self-respect, small betrayals of your own values that accumulate like dust until your soul feels dull. Sometimes you pay with attention, the most precious currency you have, spent on what keeps you distracted from your actual calling. And if you pay the wrong price long enough, you end up in a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. So the ledger exists to protect you from that kind of slow theft. Now, here is the unsettling part. The ledger is not only external. It's not only a mythic book in the hands of a god. It is also an inner function of reality. Your life remembers. Your body remembers. Your mind remembers, even when you pretend you don't. Every time you say yes to what violates you, a mark is made, not in shame, but in structure. Your nervous system learns, my boundaries are negotiable. Your psyche learns, approval matters more than truth. Your spirit learns, I can be purchased. And the more marks like that accumulate, the easier it becomes for the wrong doors to open. Because the law of doors is not just about doors. It's about who you become while approaching them. That's why the mythic image of Thoth matters. He represents a kind of cosmic literacy. He is the one who understands that destiny is not merely what happens to you. It is what gets written into you over time. He understands that a door isn't a single event. It is a paragraph in the long document of your becoming. So imagine the ledger again, but now imagine what it contains. Not just names and dates, not just grand deeds, but the quiet moments nobody applauds. The moment you almost texted someone who always pulled you into chaos and didn't. The moment you almost lied to keep the peace and didn't. The moment you almost abandoned your work because it was slow and didn't. These are the moments that shape your access. These are the moments that change which doors recognize you as ready. Because readiness is not a mood. It's a history. And history is what the scribe records. There's another layer to this, one that makes the corridor feel even more alive. In ancient temples, doors weren't just barriers. They were transitions between states of being. The architecture taught the soul, you cannot bring everything with you. To enter deeper chambers, you had to leave something behind. Noise, ego, impurity, distraction. Not because the temple was snobbish, but because the deeper spaces had different laws. They demanded different frequencies of attention. Your life is built the same way. Some doors won't open while you're carrying certain attachments. Some doors refuse you not because you aren't talented, but because you are entangled. Entangled with needing to be seen. Entangled with proving yourself to someone who never recognized you. Entangled with winning instead of becoming. Entangled with the kind of desire that is really just fear wearing perfume. And this is where the ledger becomes merciful. Because it doesn't just record what you did, it reveals what you are still carrying. You may think you're knocking on a door for success, but the ledger shows that you're actually knocking for validation. You may think you want love, but the ledger shows you're actually trying to escape loneliness by any means. You may think you want spiritual awakening, but the ledger shows you're craving superiority, the intoxicating feeling of being above ordinary humans. The door hears that. It always hears that. So it says no, not because your desire is evil, but because your desire is mixed. And mixed desires open mixed doors. You might have noticed something in your own life. The doors you force open often lead to rooms where you feel strangely diminished. You get what you want, and then you feel emptier than before. That's not bad luck. That's the law of doors. If you enter through compulsion, you enter into a room that resonates with compulsion. If you enter through deception, You enter into a room that requires deception to maintain. If you enter through desperation, you enter into a room that feeds on desperation. The ledger makes these patterns visible, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Now, the corridor begins to feel less like a hallway and more like a classroom built from stone and time. Each door becomes a lesson in alignment. Each no becomes a correction. Each delayed opening becomes a shaping force that trains your inner posture. This is not the kind of training we're used to. Our modern mind wants directness. It wants a clear checklist. It wants a quick answer. But the law of doors is older than that. It is more like music than mathematics. It is about harmony. It is about resonance. It is about whether your inner life matches the room you're trying to enter. And resonance can't be faked for long. You can fake confidence in an interview. You can fake charm on a first date. You can fake wisdom in a room full of people who don't know you. But you cannot fake resonance at the threshold. The threshold isn't listening to your words. It's listening to your frequency. It's sensing what you will become once you're inside. It's reading the fine print written in your habits. That's why Thoth is a scribe, not a warrior. He doesn't need to fight you. He just needs to record you accurately. And accuracy is the most intimidating form of truth. Because once you are accurately seen, you lose the comfort of your own excuses. So, in this mythic language, what does the ledger actually demand of you? It demands that you respect the invisible contracts you sign every day. It demands that you notice what you trade for access. Your sleep, your peace, your integrity, your attention, your dignity. It demands that you understand that every door has a seal, a kind of energetic stamp that can only be opened by a matching state in you. And it demands something else, something even more challenging, a witness. In the ancient world, the power of a vow came from being witnessed. Not in the social media sense of being watched, but in the spiritual sense of being made real through acknowledgement. A vow spoken in emptiness is easier to break. A vow spoken before a witness becomes a bond. The witness in this inner temple is your deeper self, the part of you that knows when you're lying. The part of you that keeps track even when your conscious mind tries to rewrite history. The witness is the presence that notices the subtle flinch when you agree to something that violates you. It notices the tightness when you chase an opportunity that isn't yours. It notices the hollow feeling when you perform instead of live. That witness is always there, and the ledger is always being updated. Not to imprison you, but to guide you. Because here's the most liberating truth hidden in this myth. The ledger can change. You're not doomed by old entries. You're shaped by them, yes, but not sentenced. Every time you make a new choice, you write a new line. Every time you close a door that drains you, you shift your access. Every time you stop bargaining with your own soul, you alter your destiny's architecture. And that is why the no protects you. Because a no is not just refusal, it is editing. It removes what doesn't belong. It preserves what does. It keeps the story from being corrupted by scenes you were never meant to live. But to receive that protection, you have to stop treating no as an insult and start treating it as information, as intelligence, as a form of guidance that speaks in the only language the ego cannot easily manipulate, a closed door. And once you accept that, the corridor grows even quieter because now your attention is sharpening. Now you're beginning to listen not just to what you want, but to what is true. You are beginning to sense the difference between doors that resist you because you are unready and doors that resist you because they're simply not yours. That distinction is everything. Because the psyche, when it senses you becoming more discerning, will test you. It will offer you imitation doors, doors that look like destiny but lead back into the same old rooms of craving and control. It will whisper, just this once, just to see, just to feel chosen. It will hand you keys that glitter. And the next lesson of the corridor is this. Not every key that fits is meant to be used. Some keys are temptations. Some keys are traps. Some keys are the shadow's way of getting access to rooms you have finally learned to protect. And that is where we have to go next. Into the psychology of sacred refusal. Into the inner mechanics of why the mind will try to bargain with the threshold. and why the most powerful doors often stay closed until your no becomes as clean and steady as your breath. The deeper you walk into this corridor, the more you realize it was never built to keep you out. It was built to teach you how to enter without losing yourself. And the teaching doesn't arrive as a lecture. It arrives as pressure. Pressure on the nervous system. Pressure on the ego. Pressure on the old coping strategies that used to work when life was smaller and the stakes were lower. Because the moment you begin to take doors seriously, when you stop treating every opportunity as a blessing and start asking what it costs, you trigger a response inside you that is ancient and predictable. Your psyche starts to negotiate, not always with words, often with sensations. Restlessness, FOMO, a sudden hunger for distraction, a strong impulse to check your phone, to message someone, to scroll, to eat, to drink, to do something that loosens the tight clarity forming in you. Because clarity is dangerous to the parts of you that survive through confusion. This is where the law of doors becomes psychological, almost surgical. The threshold isn't only outside you, it's in you. And your inner world has its own guardians and its own intruders. There's a simple reason why sacred refusal feels hard. For many people, yes is not a choice. It's a survival strategy. You say yes to avoid conflict. You say yes to be liked. You say yes because somewhere in your past, you learned that being agreeable kept you safe. Or because you learned that being needed made you visible. Or because you learned that refusing someone meant being punished, abandoned, shamed, or ignored. So by the time you're an adult, your yes can be automatic, like a reflex that fires before you even understand what you've agreed to. And then, later, you feel the consequences, the resentment, the exhaustion, the sense that your life is full but not fulfilled. If that's ever been you, then you already know that some doors in your life are not opened by destiny. They're opened by conditioning. The door swings open because the old self doesn't know how to say no. The sacred no is different. It's not a reaction. It's an act of authorship. It's you taking the pen from the part of you that writes in fear and writing in truth instead. But the moment you attempt that, the psyche tests you, because the psyche loves what is familiar more than what is right. Even pain can become familiar, especially pain. There's a part of the mind, call it the shadow, call it the survival self, call it the hungry child, that prefers predictable suffering to unpredictable freedom. Freedom is wide, and wide spaces can feel terrifying if your nervous system grew up bracing for impact. So the shadow will offer you familiar doors. The person who always disappoints you, the job that drains you but gives you a title, the habit that numbs you but steals your energy. These doors look normal. They even look safe, but they lead back into the same rooms you've already outgrown. This is one of the crueler illusions of adulthood. The door that opens easily is not always the door that serves you. Sometimes it's the door that serves what feeds on your old wounds. So when the corridor starts to train you, it does it by creating friction. It makes the wrong doors feel less satisfying. It makes the old rooms feel smaller. It makes the cheap yes taste bitter. And that's where people get confused. They say, why is life getting harder now that I'm trying to be more aligned? Because alignment isn't a reward at first. It's a detox. It's your system withdrawing from the familiar poison of overagreement. To understand this, you have to see boundaries as psychological immune systems. Your immune system doesn't hate the world. It just recognizes what belongs and what doesn't. It distinguishes self from non-self. And when it's healthy, it doesn't apologize for doing that. A boundary is an immune response. When you say no to what doesn't belong, you're not being cruel. You're being coherent. You are protecting the integrity of your inner ecosystem. But here's the problem. Many people have immune systems that were trained to malfunction. They learn to treat intrusion as love. They learn to treat manipulation as attention. They learn to treat chaos as intimacy. So when they attempt to build boundaries, their psyche panics. It says, if you close this door, you'll be alone. Or, if you refuse, you'll be rejected. Or, if you don't give, you won't be worthy. This is the shadow's oldest lie, that your value comes from access. That if you don't let people in, you won't be loved. That if you don't give your energy away, you won't be safe. And if you believe that lie, you will open doors that destroy you while calling it kindness. The sacred no breaks the spell. It rewires the relationship between love and access. It teaches you that love without boundaries is not love, it's consumption. It teaches you that being liked is not the same as being respected. And it teaches you that the people who truly belong in your life will not require you to betray yourself as the price of entry. But the psyche doesn't give up its old strategy without a fight. It will come at you sideways. It will offer you rationalizations that sound spiritual. Be compassionate. Be forgiving. Don't be rigid. Stay open. These phrases can be true in the right context, but the shadow uses true words for false purposes. It takes sacred language and turns it into a crowbar for your boundaries. So you need discernment, not cynicism. Discernment. Discernment is the ability to feel the difference between an open heart and an open door. An open heart can love without agreeing. It can forgive without re-entering. It can bless someone from a distance while keeping the threshold intact. An open door is different. An open door is access. It's entry. It's influence. It's the ability for another person or another impulse inside you to shape your space. A mature psyche knows that not everything deserves access. And this is where Thoth's presence can be felt again, not as mythology, but as an inner faculty, the ability to name things accurately. Because so much of the psychological struggle around no comes from not naming what is actually happening. We call manipulation need. We call control concern. We call addiction relaxation. We call self-betrayal peacekeeping. But the moment you name something accurately, it loses some of its power. The shadow hates accurate names. It prefers fog. It prefers confusion. It prefers the soft blur where it can keep negotiating. So the threshold invites you to practice a kind of inner honesty that is almost brutal in its simplicity. This drains me. This violates me. This is not mine. This is mine, but not yet. This is mine, and it requires more of me. These are not dramatic statements. They're not poetic. They are not meant to impress anyone. They're meant to stabilize you. They're meant to keep you from being hypnotized by desire. Because desire can be sacred, but it can also be a false key. Here's a hard truth. Not everything you want is aligned. Some wants are echoes of unmet needs. Some want are reactions to shame. Some wants are attempts to rewrite childhood pain with adult achievements. And when you chase those wants, you may get what you asked for and still feel empty, because what you were really trying to heal cannot be healed through external doors. This is where the corridor becomes a mirror. It shows you that the real door you're trying to open is often inside you. You're trying to enter a room called I am enough, or I am safe, or I am loved. And you keep knocking on external doors, relationships, money, recognition, hoping they will grant you entry into an internal state. Sometimes they do for a moment, and then the spell wears off, and you're back in the hallway, hungry again. The sacred refusal interrupts that cycle. It teaches you to stop using external doors to solve internal hunger. And it teaches you something even more profound. Your destiny is not just a sequence of events. It is the maturation of your yes. A mature yes is rare. It is not the enthusiastic yes of the ego that wants excitement. It is not the anxious yes of the people pleaser. It is not the impulsive yes of the addict. A mature yes is a consecration. It is a vow. It is a choice made with full awareness of cost and consequence. But to reach that level of yes, you have to train your no, because no is what protects your energy long enough to build something real. It protects your attention long enough to develop mastery. It protects your heart long enough to stop repeating the same love story with different faces. It protects your spirit long enough to hear the quieter call that gets drowned out by noise. So the corridor tests you with false keys. One of the most common false keys is urgency. Urgency is a psychological trick that bypasses discernment. It makes you feel like you have to decide now. It floods your body with adrenaline and calls it intuition. It says, if you don't act, you'll miss it. It makes you afraid of losing something you haven't even fully understood. True doors don't usually require panic. True doors can wait. True doors may challenge you, but they do not manipulate you. Another false key is flattery. Flattery feels like destiny because it feels like recognition. But recognition is not always alignment. Sometimes it's just someone sensing your hunger for approval and offering you a snack. If you have an old wound around being unseen, flattery can open doors that should have remained sealed. Another false key is guilt. Guilt is one of the oldest ways people gain access. It makes you feel like your boundary is a betrayal. It confuses love with compliance. It makes you think you owe someone your life because they were once kind to you. But kindness is not a lifetime contract. Gratitude is sacred, but gratitude does not require self-erasure. So the psyche must learn to separate these things. And when it begins to learn, something strange happens. The world reacts. People who benefited from your open doors begin to push. Old patterns escalate. The moment you close a door, you reveal who is only there for the access. This can feel lonely at first because you lose familiar connections. But what you're really losing is the illusion that you could keep everyone comfortable and still belong to yourself. You can't. Sooner or later, you have to choose a life that is widely accessible or a life that is deeply aligned. And this is where the grandeur returns because alignment is not small. It's not a self-help tactic. It's a spiritual architecture. When you begin to live with sacred refusal, you become a temple again. You become a place where not everything can wander in. You become a space where energy is treated as holy. But the corridor is not only about people and choices. It is also about forces, patterns that feel almost like entities. The moment you stop giving them access, they react. Addictions flare. Old impulses get louder. Certain relationships become more dramatic. It can feel as if something is trying to pry the door open. And maybe, in a symbolic sense, something is, because there are forces in life, human and psychological, that feed on access. They thrive on open doors. They become weak when you close the threshold. So as your no becomes cleaner, you start to see these forces more clearly. You start to recognize the ways you've been trained to leave doors ajar just in case, and how that small crack is enough for an entire pattern to slip back in. And that recognition leads us to the next part of the corridor, the part that can feel haunted if you've never named it before, the patterns that feed on access, the hungry presences that only survive when you keep inviting them, and why the most protective no you ever speak might be the one that ends a cycle you once mistook for fate. There are nights when you can feel it without any mythology at all. You're alone. The room is quiet. You've done nothing dramatic. No ritual, no candle, no incantation. Yet you sense a pressure at the edge of your attention, like a hand hovering near a doorknob. A thought returns that you didn't invite. An urge rises with a familiar voice. A memory walks back in wearing a new disguise. And you realize with a kind of tired clarity that something in you, or around you, has been waiting for a crack in the door. This is where people get uneasy because the word spirits can sound like superstition. But the truth is, you don't need to believe in literal entities to understand the reality we're describing. Spirits can be read as patterns, as emotional atmospheres, as behavioral loops with their own appetite, as the way certain relationships seem to possess you, pulling you into versions of yourself you swore you would outgrow. Call them what you want: parasites, programs, demons, complexes, addictions, hungry ghosts. The point is the same. Some forces only survive through access. They don't create energy. They consume it. And they're not always dramatic. They can be mundane. They can be social. They can be internal. They can wear friendly faces, noble causes, even spiritual language. But you can always recognize them by one signal. After they enter, you feel less like yourself. Not always immediately. Sometimes the cost arrives later, like a delayed invoice. You say yes to a person, a habit, a temptation, and at first it feels good. It feels like relief, like connection, like pleasure, like being chosen. But then you notice the leak. Your focus dissolves. Your body feels heavy. Your mood darkens for no clear reason. Your self-respect thins. You start making choices you don't even like. And then, when you try to close the door, the force reacts. It argues. It bargains. It escalates. Because access is its food. One of the oldest esoteric insights is simple and unsettling. Not everything that approaches you is approaching you for love. Some things approach you because you're radiant, because you're alive, because you carry potential, because your attention is rich. And if you are generous but unguarded, you become a feast. This isn't paranoia, it's ecology. In nature, where there is energy, something will try to feed. Your life is not exempt from that law. So the corridor of doors becomes not only a place of discernment, but a place of defense. Not defense from the world in a fearful way, but defense of your destiny in a sacred way. The temple has walls not because it hates the world, but because it protects what is holy. The question is, what is holy in you? And what have you been letting in that treats it like a resource? There are different kinds of hungry spirits. Some are obvious. The relationship that thrives on your confusion. The friend who only calls when they need something. The workplace that rewards your overfunctioning and punishes your rest. These are human forms of parasitism. They don't require supernatural belief. They require only honesty. But there are subtler ones too. The inner voice that constantly criticizes you is a spirit that feeds on your attention. The habit of checking your phone whenever you feel discomfort is a spirit that feeds on your capacity to be present. The fantasy of a perfect future that keeps you from living today is a spirit that feeds on your dissatisfaction. And then there are the patterns that masquerade as destiny. You meet someone and the chemistry is intense, almost mythic. Your body lights up. Your mind races. You feel as if the universe is speaking. But if you pay attention, not to the fireworks, but to the aftermath, you notice a familiar wound being touched. You notice your nervous system swinging between craving and anxiety. You notice that you are shrinking to keep the connection. It is not always love. Sometimes it is a hungry spirit wearing the mask of fate. Because intensity is not a seal of truth. Intensity can simply mean that two unhealed patterns have found each other. And if you've ever been in a cycle like that, you know how it feeds. The pattern thrives on the chase, on the uncertainty, on the emotional highs and lows. It makes you addicted to the door itself, the door that almost opens, the door that opens and slams, the door that keeps you in the hallway, begging for entry. That is the spirit of access. It doesn't want you inside a stable room. It wants you at the threshold forever, because the threshold keeps you hungry, and hunger keeps you controllable. So when you finally speak a clean no to that pattern, something strange happens. The intensity doesn't fade politely. It often spikes. The person returns. The urge returns. The dream returns. It's as if the pattern is testing the locks. This is why a weak boundary is often worse than no boundary. A weak boundary invites negotiation. It leaves the door cracked. And a crack is enough for a hungry spirit. It will press against it again and again until you're exhausted, until you give up, until you say yes just to end the pressure. But the temple does not survive on weak doors. It survives on sealed thresholds. The ancient mind understood this in a way we sometimes forget. Protection is not aggression. Protection is clarity. A sealed door is not hateful. It is simply final. And finality is what starving patterns cannot tolerate. So the corridor asks you to develop something that feels almost royal in its calm. The ability to close the door without drama. Not with a speech. Not with revenge. Not with a grand performance of righteousness. Just closing it. That's the sacred no again. Not reactive. Not emotional. A boundary spoken from the deep center. A refusal that doesn't tremble. Because hungry spirits feed on tremble. They feed on doubt. They feed on the part of you that wants to be convinced. Now, here's where the esoteric language becomes extremely practical. Doors don't only open through action. They open through attention. If you think about it, attention is a kind of invitation. When you fixate on something, you give it a seat in your inner temple. When you replay a conversation in your mind, you keep the person in your space. When you obsess over revenge, You keep the enemy near your altar. When you fantasize about an old lover, you give the past access to your present. This is why some spirits never leave. You keep feeding them with focus. And they don't care if your attention is love or hate. It's all calories. So the first defense is not always cutting someone off externally. Sometimes the first defense is stopping the inner rehearsal, stopping the mental bargaining, stopping the repeated reopening of the door in your imagination. Because imagination is a door too. And if you keep opening it inwardly, the pattern keeps living. This is where many people get trapped. They close a door in the outer world, block the number, quit the job, and the habit, but they keep the door open internally through rumination and longing. Then they wonder why the pattern returns. It returns because it never truly lost access. It still has a key, your attention. So Thoth's law of doors becomes a law of focus. The scribe is recording not only what you do, but what you repeatedly give your mind to. The ledger notices where your gaze goes when you're tired. The ledger notices what you crave when you're lonely. The ledger notices what you entertain when nobody is watching. And that's why the hungry spirits are so clever. They often wait for weakness. They wait for the moment you're exhausted. They wait for the moment you're unguarded. They wait for the moment you're grieving. And then they arrive with something that feels like relief. Just one drink. Just one message. Just one look. Just one compromise. Just this once. That phrase, just this once, is the language of parasites. Because they don't need permanent access right away. They only need a crack. Once the crack exists, they widen it over time. They turn once into often. They turn often into always. And then you wake up one day realizing you live in a room you never meant to enter. So the corridor teaches you to recognize the earliest moment of access. Not the obvious moment when everything has already fallen apart, but the first subtle moment when you begin to justify, when you begin to rationalize, when your body feels the pull. That moment is a threshold, and the sacred no is most powerful there. It's not dramatic. It might not even be spoken out loud. It can be as simple as an inner sentence. This is not nourishment. This is not love. This is not aligned. I will not feed this. But the mind will push back. You're being too strict. You're overreacting. You're missing out. You're being cold. The shadow will use whatever language it has. Sometimes it will use your compassion against you. Sometimes it will use your loneliness. Sometimes it will use your pride. Because hungry spirits don't have morality. They have appetite. And appetite is relentless. So how do you know when you're dealing with a hungry spirit rather than a genuine opportunity? Here's the simplest sign. Genuine opportunities do not require you to abandon yourself to enter. They may ask you to grow. They may ask you to be brave. They may ask you to risk. But they do not ask you to betray your values, your health, your dignity, your integrity. Hungry espíritos do. They offer you short-term relief in exchange for long-term erosion. They make you smaller. They make you dependent. They make you forget your own center. And sometimes they masquerade as spiritual experiences. This is important. There are people who chase altered states, ecstasy, visions, intensity, and confuse that with awakening. But not every altered state is sacred. Some are just forms of intoxication. Some are ways of escaping the work of becoming. A spirit that offers you cosmic feelings but leaves you less grounded afterward is not necessarily guiding you. It may simply be feeding you a sensation to keep you hooked. The corridor is ruthless about this, but it is also loving. It keeps returning you to one question. After this enters, am I more whole or more fractured? That question is the scribe's question. And when you ask it enough times, your life changes. Because you start to treat your inner space as a sanctuary. You start to become protective not out of fear, but out of reverence. You begin to understand that destiny is not only something you move toward, it is something you keep safe. And this is where the corridor begins to brighten, not with external light, but with an inner steadiness. Because once you stop feeding what drains you, you get energy back. Your attention returns. Your creativity returns. Your intuition becomes clearer, not because you gained a new power, but because you stopped leaking the power you already had. And when that happens, something startling occurs. The right doors begin to feel different. They no longer look like shiny temptations. They feel quiet, clean, spacious. They don't manipulate you. They don't rush you. They don't demand that you abandon your center. They invite you into a room where you can breathe. But to enter those doors, you need a different key. Not urgency, not flattery, not guilt. A different key entirely. A key made of discernment, of ritualized clarity, of a yes that is not a leak but a consecration. A yes that knows what it's doing. And that is the next step of the corridor. The right of the true yes. How to recognize the aligned opening. How to approach it without losing your sovereignty. And how to make your entry sacred so that what waits beyond the threshold becomes a home for your destiny rather than another room that drains you. After you've closed enough doors, after you've watched old patterns starve, after you've survived the escalation of temptations that once controlled you, there comes a quieter kind of moment. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with a stillness that feels almost unfamiliar, like walking out of a crowded marketplace into a room where the air is clean. This is when many people make a mistake. They assume the stillness means nothing is happening. They assume the path has gone cold. They assume destiny has forgotten them. And because they're uncomfortable with the quiet, they go looking for noise. They reopen old doors just to feel movement again. But the corridor was never about constant motion. It was about right motion. When you stop bleeding energy through unnecessary openings, you begin to store something inside you. A kind of pressure, not the anxious pressure of urgency, but the living pressure of potential gathering. Like water behind a dam. Like breath held before a chant. Like a seed swelling underground before it breaks the soil. This is when the true door comes closer. And the true door does not seduce you. It doesn't need to. It calls you in a way that is calm, clear, and strangely simple. Sometimes it appears as an opportunity that makes sense without needing to be dramatic. Sometimes it appears as a person whose presence feels steady rather than intoxicating. Sometimes it appears as a project you can't stop returning to, not because you're desperate, but because it feels like you're finally speaking your own language. The true door doesn't make you abandon yourself. It asks you to bring yourself more fully. And that's why a true yes is different from the yes most people are used to giving. A true yes is not a reflex. It is a right. A right is an intentional transition. It marks the difference between before and after. It creates a clean threshold. It says, I am entering this with awareness. I am not stumbling and half asleep. I am not crossing into this room by accident. This is the core of Thoth's hidden law. Entry must be conscious, or it will cost you more than you understand. So what does a right of the true yes look like? It begins before you answer. It begins with a pause. In a world addicted to speed, pause is a kind of magic. It interrupts compulsion. It creates space for discernment. It gives the scribe time to read the fine print. The pause can be as short as a breath, but it has to be real. Not a performative pause while you already know you'll say yes. A genuine pause where you're willing to disappoint someone, willing to lose something, willing to let the door stay closed if it's not aligned. That willingness is the first seal. Because if you cannot tolerate the door remaining closed, you're not choosing. You are bargaining. And bargaining is how hungry patterns get access. So you pause. And in that pause, you ask the first question, not a poetic one, not a mystical one, but a grounded one. What is this asking of my life? Not just what will I gain? What will it ask? Every true door asks something. It may ask for discipline. It may ask for time. It may ask for humility. It may ask you to become more responsible with your energy. It may ask you to outgrow a version of yourself that cannot come with you. And if you don't ask what it demands, you will enter unprepared. You will be surprised by the weight. You will resent the very thing you prayed for. So you ask, what will it ask? Then you ask the second question, and this one goes deeper. What part of me wants this? Because not every part of you is a good guide. Some parts want comfort at any cost. Some parts want approval. Some parts want intensity. Some parts want to prove something. Some parts want revenge on the past. And these parts can hijack your decision-making while pretending to be intuition. So you identify the voice. Is this desire coming from my centered self or from my wound? Is it coming from love or from lack? Is it coming from clarity or from fear? This is not about shaming your wounds. Your wounds are not villains. They are simply not qualified to lead you through sacred doors. A wound can point to what needs healing, but it should not be the one signing contracts. When you can feel the difference, the decision gets cleaner. Then you ask the third question, and this one is almost physical. What happens to my body when I imagine saying yes? Don't rush past this. Your body is an ancient instrument. It registers truth faster than your mind can rationalize. When you imagine saying yes to an aligned door, your body often feels more open, more settled, even if the door is challenging. There might be nervousness, yes, but underneath it, there's a sense of rightness, like your spine remembers itself. When you imagine saying yes to a misaligned door, your body often tightens. Your breath shortens. Your stomach constricts. Your shoulders rise. Even if your mind is excited, your body whispers, careful. This is the nervous system reading the threshold, and it is often more honest than your thoughts. Now, this isn't foolproof. Trauma can make the body fear good things. Old conditioning can make your system tense around growth. That's why you don't use this as a single test. You use it as part of right. You gather multiple signals, like a scribe gathering evidence. So you ask a fourth question. Does this door require secrecy to survive? This question is devastatingly clarifying. Misaligned doors often demand secrecy. They survive in the dark. The affair, the shady deal, the relationship that only works if you hide parts of it from people who love you, the habit you minimize, the compromise you don't want to admit. Aligned doors don't need to be hidden. They can tolerate light. They can tolerate being spoken aloud. They can tolerate being witnessed by your own integrity. This is one of the cleanest signs of a true yes. It does not require you to become two people. Then you ask a fifth question, and this one belongs to the ledger. What will this cost me that I cannot get back? Time is one. Attention is another. Health is another. Certain doors cost you years. Certain doors cost you the ability to trust yourself. Certain doors cost you your creative fire. If you don't account for these costs, you will overpay. And Thoth's law is simple. Overpaying is not noble. It is just inaccurate. So you account, not in fear, in honesty. And once you've asked these questions, once you've let the answer settle, you arrive at the moment most people skip. You seal the yes. This is what makes it a right. A sealed yes is not just a decision. It is a vow made to yourself. It is you saying, I will enter this door as the version of me who is capable of honoring it. Because the tragedy is not that people say yes to good doors. The tragedy is that they say yes and then try to live inside the door with the same habits that belong to the old room. They bring the old chaos into the new chamber. They bring the old self-betrayal into the new relationship. They bring the old laziness into the new opportunity. They bring the old need for validation into the new platform. And then they wonder why the blessing turns into burden. So sealing the yes means naming the new standard, not as a motivational slogan, as a commitment. If this door is my calling, then I commit to protecting my attention. If this door is love, then I commit to honesty and steadiness. If this door is a new level of influence, then I commit to humility and responsibility. This is not perfection. It's orientation. It's you deciding how you will carry yourself inside the room. And here's the beautiful part. When you seal your yes like this, the door recognizes you. The threshold responds. The room feels less hostile. The challenges feel meaningful instead of draining. You don't feel like you're fighting the door from inside. You feel like you're cooperating with its purpose. That is what aligned entry does. It makes the path feel like a partnership. Now, this right is not only for big life decisions. It's for everyday doors. The door of what you give your attention to in the morning. The door of what you consume, media, food, conversations. The door of what you agree to in small moments. Because destiny isn't only built from grand events. It's built from daily thresholds. Each time you choose focus over distraction, you enter a door that leads toward mastery. Each time you choose truth over people-pleasing, you enter a door that leads towards sovereignty. Each time you choose rest over compulsive productivity, You enter a door that leads toward health. These are all doors, and the right can be small, a breath, a pause, a question, a seal. This is how your yes becomes a consecration rather than a leak. But even with this right, the corridor has one more test. Because the moment you begin making true yes, life gets brighter in a way that attracts attention. Human attention, psychological attention, sometimes even what feels like spiritual attention. And with that attention comes a final kind of temptation. The temptation to bargain, to compromise your standard just a little for comfort, for speed, for applause. To open a side door because it looks easier. To accept a lesser room because it offers immediate relief. And the corridor will always test you there. Because destiny does not only want to give you a door, it wants to see if you can walk through it and still belong to yourself. So as you stand near the next threshold, with your yes sealed and your attention steady, you begin to sense the last chamber ahead. A corridor that narrows, a gate that feels final, and a moment where the universe will ask you, in the simplest way, whether you are willing to remain sovereign even when the old bargains whisper your name. And that is where our story must go next, into the corridor of destiny itself, where the final gate waits, and where one last no may be the very thing that preserves the life that was meant for you. By the time you reach this part of the corridor, you can feel how different you are from the version of you who first touched the handle and flinched at the word no. Not because you've become harder, but because you've become clearer. The hallway hasn't changed its stone or its shadows. The torches still burn with the same patient flame. What's changed is your relationship with the space between wanting and entering. You no longer confuse longing with permission. You no longer mistake intensity for truth. And perhaps most importantly, you no longer treat a closed door as humiliation. You treat it as information, as intelligence, as a form of protection that has been quietly shaping you into someone who can carry what you keep asking for. And now, as you move forward, something subtle happens. The corridor begins to narrow, not in a threatening way, in a deliberate way, like the architecture is guiding you toward focus, like the temple is saying, without words, that the deeper rooms are not for the scattered self. They are not for the self that wants 10 lives at once. The deeper rooms are for the self that can choose one path and walk it without constantly turning its head. This is where destiny stops being a concept and starts feeling like a pressure. Not pressure to perform, pressure to align. A kind of gravity that pulls you toward the life that matches you, and away from the lives you could live but would never truly inhabit. Because there's a difference between a life that looks impressive and a life that feels like home. The final gate does not open for the impressive life. It opens for the true one. You can sense it in the way certain options lose their shine. The things you used to chase begin to feel like costumes. They might still be beautiful. They might still get applause. But your body knows they don't belong to you anymore. They don't fit the way they used to. And there's a strange grief in that, because letting go of old doors can feel like letting go of old identities. Even if those identities were painful, they were familiar. They gave you a story. They gave you a role. But the final gate does not open for roles. It opens for the self beneath them. So the corridor tightens, and the noise falls away, and you begin to notice something else. The last temptations are never ugly. They are usually gorgeous. They arrive dressed as reasonable compromises. They arrive as almost right opportunities. They arrive as people who offer you a version of what you want, but on terms that subtly require you to shrink. They arrive as shortcuts that promise speed, but quietly demand the sacrifice of integrity. They arrive as praise that feels like a warm bath, and yet leaves you feeling strangely unclean afterward. This is the final test of doors. Not whether you can resist what is obviously wrong, but whether you can resist what is almost right. Because almost right is the most dangerous room in the temple. It is the room where people spend decades. The room where you can justify everything. The room where you can tell yourself, it's fine, while your soul slowly dries out. And the corridor knows this. That's why the final gate is guarded by the most deceptive voice, the voice of bargaining. Bargaining sounds mature. It sounds practical. It sounds like wisdom. It says, be realistic. It says, you can't have everything. It says, take what you can get. It says, maybe later. It says, this is good enough. Sometimes those phrases are true. Sometimes good enough is healthy. Sometimes compromise is necessary. But the final gate is not asking about everyday compromise. It's asking about the one compromise that changes your entire path. The one bargain that trades destiny for comfort. The one bargain that trades truth for approval. The one bargain that trades your calling for an identity that feels safer to perform. And the reason this bargain is tempting is simple. The final gate often requires you to be seen, not in a celebrity sense, in a soul sense. It requires you to step into a life that is fully yours, which means you can no longer hide behind excuses. You can no longer blame the wrong people. You can no longer say, I would have, but because the door is there, the room is ready. The only question left is whether you will enter as yourself. That's terrifying for the parts of you that survive by being adaptable. So bargaining shows up like a friend and says, let's keep the door cracked. Let's not fully commit. Let's not fully close the other options. Let's keep a backup plan. But a backup plan is often just another name for mistrust. And mistrust is an open door to sabotage, because you cannot walk fully into a true room while keeping your hands stretched backward, holding onto an old hallway. This is where Thoth's hidden law becomes almost painfully simple. The final gate does not open for the divided self. A divided self is readable. It's loud in its quiet way. It says one thing and does another. It vows and then drifts. It wants the prize, but resists the price. It wants the room, but refuses the responsibility of living in it. The final gate doesn't punish that. It simply doesn't open, not as cruelty, but as mercy, because a divided self inside a powerful room becomes a hazard. The room amplifies what you bring. If you bring division, division becomes your atmosphere. If you bring avoidance, avoidance becomes your fate. So the corridor invites you into integration, into wholeness, into the kind of inner honesty that makes you clean enough to enter without being torn apart by what you find. And now, standing near the last threshold, you might notice something that's almost comical in its truth. The final no is often not aimed at the world. It's aimed at your own old self. It's the no. You speak to your patterns, your impulses, your familiar deals. No, I will not take the easy admiration and call it love. No, I will not accept the half-life and call it stability. No, I will not numb myself and call it peace. No, I will not reopen the door to what I already outgrew. No, I will not betray my future to soothe my present. This is the no that protects destiny, because it protects the person you are becoming. And when you speak that no, something changes in the atmosphere of the corridor. Not because the universe applauds you, but because you've removed the leak. You've stopped feeding the hungry ghosts of your old bargains. You've sealed the cracks where sabotage used to slip in. This is the moment you begin to feel a new kind of yes forming. Not the yes of excitement, not the yes of desperation, but the yes of sovereignty. A yes that doesn't beg the door. A yes that doesn't demand. A yes that simply arrives as a state. And that state is what the final gate recognizes. It's worth lingering here, because people often misunderstand what it feels like when destiny truly aligns. They imagine a cinematic moment, a choir in the sky, a thunderbolt of certainty. Sometimes life gives you that. More often, it gives you something quieter and far more profound, a deep settling in the body, as if you've stopped arguing with your own path. You stop scanning the horizon for better options. You stop needing to convince anyone. You stop rehearsing your reasons. You simply step forward. And here's the mystery. When the final gate opens, it doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like responsibility. Sometimes it looks like the beginning of work, not the end of struggle. Sometimes it looks like losing what you used to call freedom, because now you're committed. Now you're devoted. Now your life has a center strong enough to organize your choices around it. That is destiny's corridor, not a hallway that leads to pleasure, but a hallway that leads to meaning. And meaning is heavier than pleasure, but it is also more nourishing. When you enter a true room, the air feels different. Not necessarily easier, but cleaner. The challenges feel purposeful rather than chaotic. Even pain feels less pointless, because you're no longer suffering in a room that drains you. You're laboring in a room that grows you. And the most telling sign that you're inside the right door is this: you become more yourself over time, not less. Your voice strengthens. Your attention stabilizes. Your relationships simplify. Your intuition clears. And the world, interestingly, begins to treat you differently. Not because you've become aggressive, but because your boundaries have made your energy coherent. Coherent energy is persuasive. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to sell itself. It simply stands, and the right things recognize it. This is why one no can protect an entire destiny. Because destiny is not a single door. It is a corridor of doors, each one requiring you to be a little more honest, a little more integrated, a little less bargainable. And the final gate, in its silent way, asks only one question: are you still available to be bought? If the answer is yes, the door will keep teaching you. If the answer is no, clean, steady, complete, then the gate opens, not as reward but as recognition. Because you have become someone who can be trusted with what you asked for. And that is the real magnificence of Thoth's hidden law. It is not about being denied. It is about being refined. It is not about the universe withholding. It is about the universe protecting the shape of your future until you are strong enough not to ruin it with an unready hand. So when you remember your own closed doors now, when you recall the refusals that once felt like heartbreak, you might see them differently. Not all of them. Some are simply life being life. But some are guardians. Some were the corridor itself, turning you away from rooms that would have eaten your light. Some were the scribe's mercy, sparing you from contracts you would have signed out of hunger. And if you're standing at a door right now, if there's something you want, something you're chasing, something you're begging life to open, then maybe the question is not, why won't it open? Maybe the question is, what is this door protecting me from becoming too soon? And if life is saying no, maybe it is not saying you will never enter. Maybe it is saying, not like this. Maybe it is saying, not while you're bargaining. Maybe it is saying, not while you're still giving access to what drains you. Maybe it is saying, become the one who can carry it. And when you become that, you won't need to force the door. You won't need to beg. You won't need to kick and bruise your own spirit against the frame. You will arrive. You will place your hand on the handle, and the door will recognize you the way a true room recognizes its rightful inhabitant. It will open with the quiet certainty of a law fulfilled, and you will step through without leaving yourself behind. The corridor will not applaud. The torches will not explode into fireworks. But something in you will know, with a calm that cannot be faked, that the life you are entering is not borrowed. It is not a performance. It is not a compromise. It is yours, and it was protected all along by the sacred intelligence of a single word. No. So take that word back from the stories that taught you it was cruel. Take it back from the people who used your openness like a hallway they could wander through. Take it back from the habits that promised relief while quietly stealing your future. Let no become what it was meant to be: a guardian, a seal, a form of love that is strong enough to be firm. And let your yes become rarer, slower, cleaner. Let it be something you offer only when you can stand inside it without splitting in two. Let it be something you consecrate, not something you toss like coins into every begging hand. Your attention is holy. Your time is holy. Your inner space is holy. Treat it that way, and the world will reorganize around your coherence. If you feel the ache of a closed door tonight, don't rush to numb it. Sit with it. Listen. Ask what it saved you from. Ask what it is shaping in you. Sometimes the door is not blocking the path. Sometimes it is guiding you toward the version of yourself who can walk the path without being devoured by it. And when the right door arrives, and it will, because alignment has its own gravity, enter it the way you would enter a temple, with awareness, with reverence, with a steady breath. Not desperate, not bargaining, not leaking, just present, because destiny is not stolen. It is received by the one who can hold it. If you stayed with me all the way to this final threshold, then you already know what most people avoid. Doors don't just open, you decide what gets access. So seal that decision right now. In the comments, write this phrase: my destiny is not negotiable. Let it be your seal, your boundary, your vow. Prove to yourself that from this moment on, you don't beg at doors that aren't yours, and you don't reopen the ones that once drained your light.